let's move on to two trait crosses. And we're going to somehow these traits get stuck together, and so they cross together. So over here we have our key. We have what we dealt with in the last several problems. We have the hair length. So capital H is dominant for short hair, and then lowercase is recessive for long hair. And then we have the coat pattern. So capital T is dominant for tabby or stripes, and lowercase t is recessive for no stripes. Now let's read the question. If the mom cat is homozygous for short, so what does that mean? Homozygous for short. So she's going to have short hair, which is capital H, and it's homozygous. So it's going to be the same. She's going to have two of the same types of alleles for this gene. Double capital H. So if the mom cat is homozygous for short and stripes, tabby. So she's also homozygous for stripes, for being a tabby cat, which is dominant, which is this capital T right here. So she's also going to have two capital T's because she's homozygous for dominant for the stripes. And the dad has long hair. So if the dad has long hair, that's a recessive gene. So that means he has to be homozygous for lowercase h's. So he has to have both of his alleles lowercase h's in order for that recessive gene to shine through in his body, for him to have long hair. So long hair, and he is without stripes. So again, he has no stripes, and that's recessive. So in order for that recessive gene to shine through, they have to take up both of the chromosomal pair. So this is going to be the dad's genotype for hair length and coat pattern. So the parents down here, we have the parents right here. So we're going to know that the parents here's the mom. She's got capital H, capital H, capital T, and the dad is lowercase h, lowercase h, lowercase t, lowercase t. So now here's the first question. What ratio of kittens would have each genotype? Well, so we just need to do one of those Punnett squares. But how do we do a Punnett square with two traits, two characters? Well, for the mom's going to be in this column right here. She has a capital H and a capital T, or she could have a combination of the same capital H but the second capital T, or she could have this second capital H and this first capital T, or she could have this second capital H and this second capital T. And now the dad could have this first lowercase h and this first lowercase t, or he could have this first lowercase h and this second lowercase t, or he could have this second lowercase h and this first lowercase t, or the second lowercase h and the second lowercase t. So now we can do Punnett squares for all these possible genotypes. So now when we go to cross these, we're going to put what the mom has in each of these rows. So she has a capital H and a capital T, capital H, capital T, and same thing for this one. And now let's do the dads. in this row, he contributes a lowercase h, lowercase t, and same for this column. So it looks like in this scenario, all of their kittens would have the genotype, a heterozygous dominant genotype, because they have one dominant and one recessive for both of these traits. They have a dominant H for short hair and a recessive H for long hair, and a dominant T for tabby and a lowercase recessive t for no stripes. So all of the kittens' genotypes would be the same. They would be dominant, heterozygous dominant. Now, here's the second question. What ratio of kittens would have each trait or phenotype? Well, we've already established that 100% of the kittens are going to have the same genotype, and this is a heterozygous dominant. So if it has a dominant, then the dominant silences the recessive, and so the phenotype is going to be the dominant capital H and capital T. So they're going to have short, tabby hair. Now let's try this again, but the parents have different genotypes. Here's your key. If both the mom and the dad are heterozygous, what would their kittens look like? So if they're going to be heterozygous for both of these traits, then that means they're going to have two different alleles for each gene. So the mom is going to have one short hair and one recessive long hair allele, and she's going to have one dominant tabby and one recessive allele for the coat pattern. And then the dad is, if he's heterozygous, same thing. It's going to have one of each. So what could their kittens look like? So if you cross a heterozygous dominant with another heterozygous dominant for both of these traits, let's do a Punnett square and find out. So mom has a capital H, and she could have a mixture of she could donate one capital H and one capital T to her child. Or she could donate that capital H and a lowercase t to her child, to her kitten. Or she could donate that lowercase h and a capital T to her kitten. Or she could donate that lowercase h and a lowercase t to her kitten. So that's going to be mom. And now dad, same thing. Dad could donate a capital H and capital T to his kittens, or he could donate that capital H and a lowercase t to his kittens, or a lowercase h and a capital T, or lowercase h and a lowercase t. So now let's go down and find out what all combinations are possible for their kittens. So this is going to have a capital H from dad and a capital T from dad. So we're going to put capital H, capital T, capital H, capital T. And this is going to have a capital H, lowercase t from dad. And this is going to have a lowercase h, capital T from dad. And this one is going to have lowercase on both, a lowercase h and a lowercase t. And now for Mom, on this first row, she's going to donate her capital H and capital T to everything. On this row of possibilities, she's going to donate a capital H and a lowercase t. On this row, a lowercase h and a capital T. And on this row, lowercase on both. So now, how do we write this answer out when we're being tested on this in class? Well, let's go through, and first we're going to find the homozygous dominant kittens for both alleles. So that's going to be this first square right here. It's all capitals. So I don't see any other squares that have all capitals in it. So that's going to be 1 out of 16. There are 16 squares here because there's 4 down and 4 across. 16 squares. So 1 is going to be homozygous dominant for both alleles. Now let's look at the next one. We have a homozygous dominant for short hair and a heterozygous dominant for tabby, for stripes. Now let's look and find all the other squares that have this same combination. So we're going to look for 2 capital H's and 1 capital T and a lowercase t. So here is 2 capital H's, a capital T and a lowercase t. And I think that is it for 2 capital H's and 1 capital T, 1 lowercase t. So we're going to have 2 capital H's, capital T, and a lowercase t, and that's going to be 2 squares that have that combination in them. Now let's look at the next one. We're going to have a lowercase h and a capital H. We're going to have heterozygous for the hair length and 2 dominant capital T's for the stripes for tabby. So that is a capital H and a lowercase h and 2 capital T's. So let's go through these squares and find all the squares that have the same combination. So here, over here is a capital H, a lowercase h, and 2 capital T's. And it looks like that is all we have for a heterozygous hair length, dominant hair length, and a homozygous dominant coat pattern. So that's 2 squares also. So we're going to have 2 right there. Now we're going to do the next one. We have a capital H and a lowercase h, and we also have a capital T and a lowercase t. So capital H, lowercase h, capital T, lowercase t. So let's go through and find out all the squares that also have that pattern. So here's one right here. And let's see, we have one right here, a capital H and a lowercase h. It doesn't matter what order they're in. It just matters that they're there. So capital H, lowercase h, capital T, lowercase t. And here's another one. We have a capital H, lowercase h, capital T, lowercase t. And it looks like that's it. So we kind of have a tic-tac-toe here, or 4 in a row. So that's 4 of them. Now let's move on to the next square. And let's do this one. We have homozygous dominant for hair length. We have 2 capital H's. And we have homozygous recessive for coat pattern, two lowercase t's. So we're going to have two capital H's and two lowercase t's. So how many squares do we have that has this combination in it? Well, it looks like we only have that one square that has that combination in it. So we're going to do 1 for that one. Now let's go to the next square. We have a capital H, lowercase h, and two lowercase t's. So what all squares, here, let me write this down, capital H, lowercase h, and two lowercase t's. So let's find all the squares that have that. And we can find that down here. We find a second one. So that's 2. Now let's move on to our next square. We have two lowercase h's and two capital T's. And that is the only square that has that specific combination in it. So we're going to write 1. Now we move on to the next one, and we have two lowercase h's and one lowercase and one capital T. And we can find that in two of the squares. There's one down there and one right here. So we're going to have 2. And then finally, we have all recessive, homozygous recessive, a lowercase h, and a lowercase h, and a lowercase t, and a lowercase t, and that's just one of them. So out of these 16 squares, we're going to have one all dominant, and then 2 dominant short hair and heterozygous tabby, 2 heterozygous short hair and homozygous tabby, 4 heterozygous for both, 1 homozygous dominant for short hair and homozygous recessive for no stripes, 2 heterozygous for dominant for hair length and homozygous recessive for no stripes, 1 homozygous recessive for long hair and homozygous dominant for tabby, 2 homozygous recessive for long hair and a heterozygous dominant for tabby, and 1 recessive everything, long hair and no stripes. So that's going to be the genotype, the ratio of kittens that would have each genotype. But what ratio of kittens would have each trait? Well, the genotype, as you should know by now, is not the same thing as what actually happens with their bodies. We have to figure out how the kittens are going to look. So in this first one, this is all capital dominant, so it's going to be dominant for both. So we're going to have short hair and tabby, or stripes. And this next one, they're also going to have short hair and tabby for stripes because they have this dominant T. The next one is going to have short hair and tabby for stripes. The next one is also going to be short hair and tabby for stripes. So this is 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 2 is 5, plus 4 is 9. So that's going to be 9 out of 16 kittens will have short hair and tabby striped pattern on their coat. Now let's look at the rest of these. We have one that is homozygous dominant for short hair and homozygous recessive for no stripes. So short hair and no stripes. And this is also going to be, there's going to be 2 kittens with short hair and no stripes with this genotype. And then that's it for that that phenotype. So 1 plus 2 is 3. So there's going to be 3 out of 16 kittens with short hair and no stripes. Now what about the next one? We have homozygous recessive for long hair and homozygous dominant for tabby or stripes. So this is going to be for long hair and stripes or tabby. Now this next one is going to also have long hair because it's homozygous recessive, and it's also going to be tabby because it has the dominant T, the capital T, to cancel out the recessive lowercase t. And so that's going to be it for long hair and tabby. So 1 plus 2 is 3. So 3 out of 16 kittens are going to have long hair with tabby coat pattern, which just leaves us with this final one, dominant recessive for short hair or long hair and dominant recessive for no stripes. So long hair and no stripes is going to be 1 out of 16 kittens. So these are going to be the ratio of phenotypes of the kittens. Okay, so in this question, the mom cat is heterozygous and the dad has long hair and no stripes. So the mom cat is heterozygous, so heterozygous means different. So for hair length, she's going to have one capital H for short hair and one lowercase h for long hair. And for coat pattern, she's going to have a capital T for tabby and a lowercase t for no stripes. And then the dad is going to have long hair and no stripes. So those are both recessive traits, long hair and no stripes. So he is going to have to be homozygous because if he were to have um, a capital H and a lowercase h, that capital H, which is dominant for short hair, that's going to cancel out the long hair allele. So he can't be heterozygous. He must be homozygous for these traits, for these recessive alleles. So we have the mom and the dad here. So let's set up our Punnett square. Starting with the mom. The mom could have a combination of capital H, capital T, or she could have a combination of capital H, lowercase t, or she could have she could give a combination lowercase h, capital T to her kitten, or she could give a combination of lowercase h, lowercase t to her kittens. And then the dad, he's going to be all lowercase. So it doesn't really matter how we uh, combine these. All the combinations are going to be lowercase h, lowercase t. Okay, so if we go across with the mom's genotype up here, we're going to have capital H, capital T, And on the second row, we're going to have a capital H, lowercase t. On the third row from on the mom, we're going to have lowercase h, capital T. And on the very bottom, lowercase h, lowercase t. Now for the dad, we can start in this first column, but they're all going to be lowercase h's and lowercase t's for the whole Punnett square. Okay, so let's look at what we have for the first genotype. The very first genotype is heterozygous dominant for both genes, for the hair length and the coat pattern. So this is a capital H and a lowercase h, capital T, lowercase t. And again, this is going to be out of 16 possible squares because there's 4 down and 4 across. So if we look at our at all of our squares, let's find all the squares that have heterozygous dominant for these traits. So this first one definitely is, and then this next one, and this next one, and I think that is it for this genotype. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. So 4 out of the 16 squares are going to be heterozygous dominant for both traits, character traits. Then let's look at the next one. We have a heterozygous dominant for short hair and a homozygous recessive for no stripes. So let's find all of the ones where those where all the squares where those have the same genotype. So 4 going across. So for heterozygous dominant for short hair and homozygous recessive for no stripes, we'll have 4 out of 16. Now let's look at the next one. We have homozygous recessive for long hair and heterozygous dominant for tabby. So that's these squares going across. And so that's going to be 4 out of 16. And then finally the last one, we have all homozygous recessive. Homozygous recessive for long hair, homozygous recessive for no stripes. And we have 4 of those. So that's going to be 4 out of 16. Oops, 4 out of 16. Now before, I think you saw me write this a different way. This time I'm writing them in like fractions, 4 out of 16 out of the 16, and which is, you can write it either way. And so this, since they all have 16 as the bottom of their fraction, because it's all out of 16 squares, we can go ahead and reduce these 4 out of 16 fractions down to 1/4. And when you write the ratio down, you're just going to take the top numbers. Since all the bottom numbers, they're all 4, so we can just not worry about the 4s on the bottom of the fractions and just write 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 are going to be the ratio of kittens with each genotype, which is the first question right here. And so now what ratio of kittens would have each trait? Well, if we look at the very first one, we have heterozygous dominant for both traits. So we're going to have short hair and a tabby coat pattern. And it doesn't look like that's going to be part of any other genotype that we have. So the short hair and tabby coat pattern is going to be just one. And then we have heterozygous for short hair and homozygous for no stripes. So we're going to have short hair and no stripes. And that's just going to be one. And then the next genotype is homozygous for long hair and heterozygous for tabby. So the phenotype would be long hair and tabby, and that would be just one. And then this last one is homozygous for long hair and homozygous for no stripes. So long hair and no stripes. And that's going to be 1. So the ratio is still going to be 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 on this for the phenotypes. So it's just a coincidence that the genotype ratio and the phenotype ratio is exactly the same. That's just a coincidence. Sometimes these will be different.